Hi, I'm Lauren and welcome back to my craft room. I have another Whimsy Stamps video for you today and I'm super excited to share with you this fun slimline card. So today's card is a slimline, like I said earlier, and I have this fun little gnome party row set and a fun sentiment that I use some stamping and a mix of die cutting. I hope you enjoyed this fun card tutorial. We're going to be using the new Dainty Daisy Slimline background rubber stamp and some VersaMark ink to completely cover this background stamp. I'm going to bring out a piece of cardstock. This is a Bristol smooth cardstock, and just going to be applying it right onto my stamp. I'm applying even pressure, making sure that I have applied pressure to the center of the stamp as well as all four edges. I'm going to bring out some white embossing powder and we're going to cover all of that VersaMarked stamped image, and I'm going to make sure I have a nice coverage of all of this white embossing powder. There was a little bit of a remnant of some black ink, but that's not a big deal. As I'm using some white embossing powder, you won't even see it once we get this under the heat gun. I have warmed up my heat gun and I'm going to start embossing. It's basically melting down the tiny pieces of plastic inside of this powder. And once that is all done, I'm going to bring out my Distress Oxides and we're going to do an embossed resist background. I'm using the brand new, extremely beautiful Salvaged Patina. I absolutely love this new color. It's so perfect, kind of has that Tiffany blue look to it. And I'm going to cover a little more than half of my background, and then I'm going to get out Peacock Feather, which I think is a perfect pair with this color. They're just so beautiful together, and I'm going to do the other side and work to blend those two colors together. So I'm going to clean off my brush and go back to the lighter color and really just try to blend those colors in so we get a nice smooth transition between the two beautiful oxide colors. Now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and bring out a paper towel and we're going to basically rub off any of that excess ink. So I'm starting with the lighter color and I'm rubbing off all the excess ink on the embossed image, and then I'll move over to the darker color. And there you can see those beautiful daisies really shining through on that Salvaged Patina and Peacock Feathered background. I use my Distress sprayer to add some water droplets, and I'm going to do that twice. I wanted a lot of kind of a grungy water look to it, and I'm going to use my paper towel to pick up the excess ink. I have some metallic watercolors and I decided to go with a more yellow gold, and I'm going to just flick that on with a paintbrush to my background. I am a little bit impatient, so I decided to use my paper towel to pick up any excess water from that watercolor. And now I have a beautiful background that's a nice shimmer from our metallic watercolor and just a gorgeous color from our Distress Oxides. I'm going to set that aside and we're going to work on stamping our image. Now this is the new Gnome Party row and I'm going to emboss it onto this piece of cardstock. So I'm just using an embossing buddy with some baby powder to help with the static of my cardstock. I applied my VersaFine ink in Onyx Black and I'm stamping it down with my Misty. It looks really good after that first stamp, so I'm just going to set my Misty aside and I'm going to bring out some clear embossing powder this time, and I'm going to cover all of my image, and then I will use the heat gun to melt that embossing powder down. Now I'm embossing these images because I'm going to be watercoloring, and I really like when I use my Zig watercolors to have a kind of well basically for my watercolor ink. The embossed lines kind of create a raised line, allowing me to stay a little more inside the lines as I color. So I'm just going to quickly go through this. I just used some various shades of peach and brown to color in different skin tones for my gnomes. And then I really wanted their hats and shirts to match the colors I was going for on my background. So I'm pulling out some teals and some blues, and I'm going to be using yellow as my card base. And I also did use yellow metallic watercolor on my background, and I'm just going to show you how I colored one of my hats. I'm just putting ink where I think the darkest part of the hat would be. Any anywhere where there would be shadow or shading on the hat. And then I have my blender zig pen, and I'm just going through and blending that watercolor out into the light part of the hat. That's just to give it a little bit of shadow and depth without going crazy with shadows. I like just adding down one layer of color and then using my blender to bring that color out and fill into lighter areas of the image. I colored all of their shoes with a darker warm gray, and then I'm going to be coloring in the hair and beards between this kind of red-headed orange color, and then also with different shades of brown and gray. And it's really fun coloring in these large beards. I just think they're so cute. For this one, I'm going to go all with gray and then flick in some additional color just to help give it a little bit of depth. And I'm just going to keep coloring all of these gnomes until I'm happy with how they turned out, and then I will clean up my little station here, and then I am going to fussy cut this out once it's dry. I thought about using my scan and cut, but I just decided to use my paper snips and snip around the image. And this is how it's going to go onto my background, so let's start assembling our card. I'm using some yellow cardstock from Cardstock Warehouse, and I'm going to cut that down to be my card base. I've cut it down to 8.5 by 7.5 and scored it at 3.5, so it would make an 8.5 by 3.5 card base. I'm going to trim my daisy embossed background down to 3.25 by 8.25, and that way it would leave a little bit of a border around my background so you could see that yellow kind of peeking out behind my daisies, and that would give more yellow to the card. I'm going to apply some strong sticky tape to the back of my embossed and distressed and splattered cardstock because it has been tortured a little. I want to make sure it's nice and secure to my card base. So I'm going to go ahead and center that right onto my yellow card base. I'm going to use a paper towel just to help press down because I get ink everywhere, and I thought using a paper towel would be a little more helpful in case there was any wet ink still on my background. So now let's keep on assembling the card. I have my little row of gnomes here, and I'm just going to use some foam squares to pop them up onto my card. And I'm going to center that towards the bottom so it looks like they're kind of just standing around and ready to party. I really love this new word die to make best friends. So I am going to die cut them all out of that same yellow paper. And I originally thought about using this whole sentiment on my background, but the F is very large, so I'm just going to use the best sentiment, but I wanted to create this drop shadow, so I cut the sentiment out of yellow and also out of some teal paper, and I went ahead and did best friends, even though I'm going to save my friends for another project. So now I have my best, and I have 2 banners cut for my quick strips, and I want to stamp my sentiment. So I'm going to start with the beginning of my sentiment, best wishes and from your, so I get them centered to each other onto my clear block, and I'm just stamping it in some black ink towards the right of one banner, and then I'm stamping Gnomies on the right of my other banner because my best die cut is going to go to the left of Gnomies. So my sentiment will say, best wishes from your best Gnomies. I just thought that was so cute. So I'm playing around with the banner placement. I was kind of thrown off not using the whole sentiment like I was originally going to do, but that F was just so tall, so I'm just using best, and now I had to really think about how I wanted my banners to line up. So I trimmed down the best wishes from your banner using that same die. I just kind of slid it down so it would cut a little closer to my sentiment. And then I'm going to apply some foam tape, and it's going to go above my other banner a little to the left, and it would kind of create this layered look of sentiment strips. I'm going to add another strip of foam tape to my second banner, and I'm going to put that to the bottom right. And it ends up being a little too far left because you'll see I'll try to fit my die and it's just too clustered. So I'm going to very carefully peel that off, and luckily it's not super secure yet. And I'm going to scoot it over more to the right so the banner hangs off a little more, but my Gnomies is still very visible on my sentiment strip here. And then my best die cut fits so much better. So I'm going to trim off the excess of that banner that's hanging off the side of the card, and then I'm going to bring out my wet glue, and I'm going to start with the EST that's all connected on this die cut and place that onto my quick strip banner sentiment strip there. And then I will do the same for my bee. I really love the shape and style font of this bee. I think it's so fun. And placing that on there, and now you can see my full sentiment. I'm really happy with how it turned out, but it did feel a little lopsided now, so I'm going to bring out some lemony yellow sequins that I have from this embellishment pack, and I'm going to just place some yellow sequins all over my card, but keep it really heavy on the left side just to kind of help even it out. Here is my final card. I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial and that you try some of these techniques out, like the embossed resist background yourself. I hope you've been really loving all of the new Whimsy Stamps products. You can find links to everything that I use down below in the description. Have a wonderful day.